The spaceship Nova Spear landed gently on the floating docking bay of Red Spire Academy, a place known across the galaxy as the hardest survival school ever built. Located near the burning moon Velikar, the Academy trained young warriors from many planets. Only the best of the best were accepted. Among the colorful crowd of alien cadets walking out of the ship, one girl stood out. Her name was Lena Rourke, and she was human. She had no armor, no glowing tech, no floating drones. Just a simple desert cloak, dusty boots, and a strong, quiet walk. Her hands were bare, not metal, not shielded. Just skin and fingers, like the early humans who once hunted and built fire with stone. Other cadets noticed her right away. Most of them were taller than her, some with bright scales, others with glowing eyes or cybernetic limbs. They whispered and laughed as she passed by. Is that one? Primitive? A green-skinned cadet with a scanner helmet whispered. She doesn't even have neural implants, said another with insect-like wings.
Ow, what is she doing here?
Lena heard it all, but she didn't
Speak.
She kept walking, head held high, eyes calm and focused. Her shoulders were strong but not tense. She had been through worse before. Earth wasn't always kind. She had learned to stand alone, and now that skill would help her more than anything else. As they reached the academy gates, a large hologram lit up in the sky. Welcome to Red Spire Academy, where fire is forged through trial. A tall instructor floated down from a hoverpad. His skin shimmered like silver, and he wore a black uniform with glowing red lines. I'm Commander Telrix, he said in a deep, cold voice. You are not warriors yet, you are learners. Survivors. Only those who pass the trial of flame will be accepted into our ranks. He raised one hand, and a row of fire pillars rose from the stone ground, each one flickering with heat and energy. Each of you has trained on your home worlds. You think you are ready? But this place, he gestured to, the harsh desert moon below, does not care about your tech. It does not respect your species. It only respects strength. True strength. The group went silent. You will face your first trial soon. Till then, rest. Observe. But remember, this only those who return with fire will move forward. Those who fail, he paused, looking at each cadet with cold eyes, will be sent home. The cadets were led to their dorms, shining glass towers with glowing energy fields. Each cadet got their own small room with smart walls, beds that adjusted to their biology and machines for food and training. Lena's room was smaller, a corner unit with no windows and no tech upgrades. Some of the systems didn't even respond to her touch. A few buttons flickered, not recognizing her DNA. She didn't complain. She didn't try to fix it. Instead, she unpacked her bags. A few old tools, a worn-out journal, and a small piece of black glass tied with string. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked out through the force field wall. In the distance, the desert moon of Velikar glowed red under twin suns. Storms rolled over its surface like smoke. There was no water, no trees, just sand, stone, and wind, and it was calling her. In the training hall the next day, cadets were paired up for basic skills tests. Each group was assigned to target a metal dummy that simulated attacks. The cadets showed off their weapons: plasma staffs, energy claws, anti-grav discs. Sparks flew. Noise filled the air. When it was Lena's turn, she stepped up with empty hands. The alien cadets watched, confused. Where's her gear? She's going to fight with her fingers. Even the instructors looked unsure. Commander Talrix raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Lena didn't answer the whispers. She stood still, breathing slowly. When the dummy moved forward fast and sharp, she stepped to the side, grabbed its arm, and flipped it using its own momentum. The dummy crashed to the ground with a loud thud. The room went silent. She had used no weapon, no trick, just movement, fast, clean, and perfectly timed. Then she turned and walked away without a word. Later that evening, as cadets relaxed in the courtyard, many of them spoke about the test. That human, she's strange, Maybe lucky. That move won't work in real combat. Still, did you see how fast she was? Others weren't impressed. She'll break in the trial, said a cadet with 4 arms and glowing eyes. The desert eats weak things. No one noticed Lena sitting alone near the edge of the courtyard, her face lit by the soft red glow of Velikar. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was waiting, listening, preparing. She had grown up in deserts on Earth, trained in old survival camps, learned from people who lived with the land, not above it. They didn't use machines to survive. They became part of the world. 8. Didn't force nature to give up fire. They coaxed it out, with patience and skill. Soon, the trial would begin.
Oh.
Everyone would be dropped on Velikar, alone, with no help. The others would bring machines. She would bring herself, and when the time came, they would see what bare hands could really do. The twin suns rose over Velikar, casting a red and gold light across the Academy's launch platform. The desert moon below looked angry and alive. Great sandstorms moved like slow beasts across the surface, and waves of heat danced in the air. Like invisible flames, every cadet stood at attention in front of their personal drop pods. There were no teams, no friends. This was a solo challenge. One mistake could mean failure or worse. Commander Telrix walked down the row, hands behind. His back, voice firm and cold. "Today begins the trial by flame," he said. "You have 72 hours. Survive the heat, survive the land. Turn with a source of fire that burns by your own skill. No outside help, no contact. Your pods will deactivate once you touch the ground." He paused, letting the silence settle like dust. "Good luck, if your kind believes in such things." One by one, the cadets entered their pods. Shiny metal doors closed. Engines, EPS. Lena stood in front of her pod, holding nothing but her satchel and wearing the same desert cloak. Other cadets looked at her and whispered again, "No armor, no scanners. She's really going down there like that?" She didn't look at them. She stepped into her pod and pulled the door shut. Inside, it was quiet. She sat on the hard seat, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. Her heart beat steady. Her fingers moved over the old leather strap of her satchel. She whispered to herself, "Just like Earth, just like home." Then the pod shook, engines roared, and gravity pulled her down. The drop to Velikar was fast. Hot air slammed against the pod. Outside, wind howled. The screen showed red cliffs, cracked rocks, and seas of moving sand. Lightning flashed through dark storm clouds. Lena's pod hit the ground with a thud. The lights turned off. Power gone. Just as promised, she pushed the door open and stepped out. The heat hit her first, like standing inside an oven. The sun above was blinding. Sand blew across her boots like waves, but she didn't flinch. She took out a cloth mask and wrapped it around her face. Then she looked around carefully. No trees, no shade, no life. Good. That meant no one would bother her. She walked toward a group of low rocks in the distance. She didn't rush. Every step mattered. Moving too fast in this heat could kill. Far away, in the Academy's command room, instructors watched screens showing the cadets' progress. Some used drones to scan for resources. Others deployed mechanical arms to dig. Shiny tools appeared laser. Drills, fuel extractors, even fusion cubes. When they saw Lena walking with empty hands, one instructor laughed. "She's going to fail in an hour." Telrix didn't laugh. He simply watched. Back on Velikar, Lena reached the rocks and took shelter behind them. The stone gave a little shade. Not much, but enough to sit and think. She took out her small journal and opened a page filled with rough sketches. She studied it for a moment, then looked at the ground. The sand was not just sand. It was a mixed quartz, iron, salt. It's the kind she had seen in Earth's deserts. The kind that could become glass. She picked up a handful and smiled. This will work. She began to gather stones, flat ones that held heat. Then she started to dig, slowly, making a small pit. She lined it with rocks and filled it with dry, thin metal flakes she found in the sand, probably from old meteors. She took 2 sticks from her satchel, plain-looking, but carved with care. One was smooth, the other had tiny ridges. She placed them together and began to turn one with the other, using a string wrapped around them. It looked old-fashioned. It looked slow. But heat began to rise. The cadets in other parts of the desert weren't doing so well. One alien cadet's drone overheated and exploded. Another's plasma extractor got jammed by sand. Some shouted in anger, called for help, but no help came. Velikar was not a kind place. It didn't care how advanced. Your tools were... If you didn't respect it, it pushed back. The desert wind howled across the rocky ground of Velikar, blowing waves of red sand over everything. The heat never stopped, and the sky stayed the color of fire. The twin suns above were bright and merciless. Lena Rourke sat near a ring of stones she had carefully built. Her face was red, her lips dry, and her hands covered in dust. But her eyes were sharp. Focused, she worked without machines. Without help, just bare hands, old tricks, and the knowledge passed down through generations. Her small fire pit was nearly ready inside it. She had placed flakes of metal found in the sand, shaped into thin curls. Around the edges she had packed heat-holding stones. She had used her own carved sticks and bow to create friction. Smoke had come first, then tiny embers. She had fed them slowly with desert grass and dry sand crust, letting the fire grow in secret. Now, the fire was alive. It didn't roar like alien engines. It didn't glow blue like plasma. It was soft, steady, and warm real. Lena smiled faintly. She wasn't finished yet. She stood and walked to a patch of white sand nearby. With her foot, she scraped the surface until she found what she was looking for, quartz sand, rich and smooth. It sparkled under the sun. She filled her satchel with it, then returned to her pit next. She took out a small rock hammer and began breaking a few dark stones she had gathered earlier. They were iron-rich, perfect for holding heat and shaping. Molten sand. She worked patiently, not rushing. In this trial, panic was the enemy. When the sun reached its peak, Lena poured the fine sand into a bowl-shaped stone and placed it in the center of her fire. She covered it with another hot stone and watched as the color of the sand slowly changed gray, yellow, orange. Then, at last, dash glow. Meanwhile, far above, in the academy control room, the instructors were watching. Dozens of screens showed alien. Cadets struggling in the harsh environment. One cadet was stuck under fallen equipment. Another's fuel extractor had melted in the heat. Some were calling for early extraction. Their faces were full of frustration and fear, but Lena's screen showed something different. Commander Telrix leaned forward, staring. "She's melting sand," one instructor asked, confused. "That's not possible," another said. "With no tech?" Lex didn't answer, just kept watching. Back on Velikar, Lena waited until the glowing sand began to bubble. She removed the topstone using 2 flat pieces of metal like tongs. The inside of the bowl flickered with light. She smiled. The sand had turned into liquid glass. She picked up a long piece of broken pipe left from some old wreck she had found nearby. Carefully, she dipped the tip into the molten glass and pulled it out slowly. It formed a glowing ball at the end. Then, using the wind and her breath, she began to shape it. It was not perfect. It was rough. But it was real human-made glass, born from fire, sand, and air. When it cooled, she broke off the end and placed it in a second pit she had prepared, inside this new container. She built another small fire using the heat storing, stones, and more dry flakes. She placed the glass globe on top and added crushed mineral powder salt and old ash found from the edges of the desert storm trail. Within minutes, the inside began to glow again. This time, it was different. Glass acted like a lens. It trapped the heat. The fire grew hotter, even with barely any fuel. The flame was clean and bright. She had created a sustainable fire, one that could last for days without modern fuel. It was small, but it was powerful, like a desert forge made. by human hands. Elsewhere, the other cadets continued to fail. Some couldn't find shelter. Some had used all their resources in the first few hours. Their tech was too advanced, too sensitive, or simply useless in a place like Velikar. Machines broke, batteries drained, drones crashed. A few cadets sat in silence, watching their tools die in the heat. Others tried to copy Lena when they saw her image on the academy screens. They gathered sand and rocks, trying to make fire by rubbing sticks, but they didn't know how. They burned their fingers. They broke their tools. They gave up. By the start of the third day, the red sands of Velikar looked even harsher. The wind was stronger, and the twin suns burned brighter than ever. It was the final stretch of the trial by flame. Only 6 cadets were still in the trial, and one of them still healthy. Still focused was the human girl with bare hands, Lena Rourke. Her fire still burned in the desert, alive inside her handmade forge. The tiny flame flickered through the glass she had shaped. It glowed warm orange in the morning light, as steady as her breath. She had done what many said was impossible. She had created fire from nothing. No machines, no energy cells, no alien tech. Just her own skill, patience, and knowledge passed down. From Earth's oldest survival traditions now, it was time to return. Lena carefully packed the glowing glass globe in a soft pouch of desert fiber she had made the day before. She wrapped it with heat-safe cloth, then tied it tight with string. The fire inside would survive the trip. She looked back once at the place she had worked so hard to build her little forge of stones and ashes. Then she stood up, slung her satchel over her shoulder, and began walking back across the red desert. Her steps were slow but steady. She followed the shadows of the cliffs to stay out of direct sunlight. She chewed dry roots for water, gathered from near the storm trails. She had mapped her path with stones and symbols scratched into rock. She knew where she was going, far above. In the Red Spire Academy Control Center, the instructors watched silently. The room was no longer noisy. Only 3 cadets had managed to create any kind of flame. Of them, only Lena's fire was still active, sustained and stable. Commander Telric stood with arms crossed, eyes on the screen. "She did it," whispered one of the younger officers. "With no help," said another. "No equipment, just survival skill." "She hasn't failed once," said the tech officer. "Her vitals are normal. Her supplies are low, but she's using everything wisely. This ... this is rare." Telrix didn't speak, but something had changed in his expression. Back on Velikar, Lena climbed a ridge of red stone. The sand shifted under her boots, but she kept going. Sweat ran down her neck, and the heat pressed against her skin like a heavy blanket. She reached the top and paused. In the distance, she could see the edge of the drop zone where the extraction beacon would activate. It was still far, but she was close. Suddenly, she heard movement. Behind her, someone was sliding down the slope dash fast. She turned. An alien cadet stumbled into view. It was the insect-like boy from her first day, the one who had laughed at her. Bare hands. He was injured. His left leg was bleeding from a fall, and he was dragging a broken metal device behind him. His fire source was gone. His tools had failed. He looked at Lena with tired, frightened eyes. I lost it," he said, out of breath. "The wind took everything. I tried to make flame again, but..." He looked down, ashamed. "I won't make it back." Lena didn't. "Speak it first." She studied him carefully. His wings were torn. He had no supplies. The heat was getting to him. Then she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small flask of mineral water she had saved. She handed it to him. "Drink slowly," she said. The cadet blinked, surprised. "You're helping me?" "You're not." "My enemy," she replied. "Just someone trying to survive." He drank, his hand shook. "Your fire? It's still burning?" "Shh." "How? What are you made of?" Lena gave a small smile. "Earth." The wind howled louder as Lena and the injured cadet walked across the final stretch of the Velikar Desert. The sky had begun to change. Dark red clouds moved in from the horizon, rolling like giant waves across the burning sky. A sandstorm was coming. The cadet beside her limped with every step. using a broken metal rod as a walking stick. His wings dragged behind him, torn and useless. But he didn't complain. Lena walked slightly ahead, guiding him. Her eyes were calm, focused on the ground. Each step was placed carefully, avoiding soft sand or sharp stones. Inside her satchel, wrapped in layers of cloth, the glass globe still glowed softly. The fire was alive. Behind them, another cadet's voice echoed across the rocks. Wait. They turned to see a tall, blue-scaled alien girl, one of the top students in the class. She ran awkwardly, her breathing heavy. Her advanced gear was damaged and covered in dust. She carried a broken power core in her hands, but it was clearly useless. "I saw your signal flare," she said, looking at Lena. "You're going back?" Lena nodded. Did you make it? Did your fire survive?" Lena opened the flap of her satchel slightly. A warm glow flickered inside. The alien girl's eyes widened. "That's not possible, you really." Before she could finish, the wind grew louder. The sandstorm was nearly upon them. "We need to move now," Lena said. "Storm's coming." Fast. The three of them moved together, covering their faces and lowering their heads against the rising wind. Lena gave pieces of her extra cloth to the others. Even though she had barely enough for herself, she shared without hesitation. Every few steps, the wind tried to knock them over. Sand stung their skin and got into their eyes. Visibility dropped. The world became a blur of red and gold. But Lena kept walking. She counted her steps. Following landmarks she had marked 2 days ago, small piles of stone, pieces of metal, etched signs. She had prepared for this. The others followed her lead. Far above, in the Red Spire Academy Command Center, the instructors stood in silence. The sandstorm covered most of the camera views now. Many cadets had already failed or called for rescue. Only 4 remained active, and only 1 fire was still alive. The human girl's screen flickered with static. But her vitals were strong. "She's guiding the others," one instructor said quietly. "She could have left them behind," said another. But she didn't. Commander Telrix leaned closer to the display. His sharp alien eyes watched every movement. The first time in years, he looked pressed. "She's not just surviving," he said. "She's leading." Back on Velikar, Lena and the 2 cadets finally reached the edge of the trial zone. Circle marked by metal pylons and a thin blue light that pulsed from the ground. It was the safe zone. Once they entered, their trial would end. The storm behind them roared like a beast. Sand spun in high columns. The sky was dark, almost black. Lena turned to help the injured cadet across the line first. He stumbled, but made it through. The tall alien girl followed next, her eyes wide with relief. Then Lena stepped forward, and lapse. The instructors in the control room jumped to attention. "She's down." Someone called. "Vitals dropping," said the medic officer. "Heart rate low. She's dehydrated." Telrix moved fast. "Send the med drones now." On the ground, the sand blew over Lena's body as she lay on her back, still holding her. Satchel tight, her hands trembled, but she hadn't let go of the fire. The injured cadet crawled toward her and opened the bag. The glass globe was still glowing. "She kept it alive," he whispered. Seconds later, a silver medical drone landed. Beside them, robotic arms gently lifted Lena into a safety pod. The other cadets followed. The pod's engines flared, and they lifted into the sky back toward Red Spire. Hours later, Lena woke up in the Academy infirmary. The lights were soft. The air was cool. A glass of mineral water stood on the table beside. Her satchel sat nearby, untouched. The fire globe was placed on a raised platform in the center of the room, still burning gently. She blinked slowly. Her throat was dry, but she managed to speak. "It's still lit." "Yes, and it has not gone out." The voice came from the shadows near the doorway. Lena turned her head slowly. Her body still felt weak, but her eyes were alert. Commander Telrix stood there, tall and still, with his hands behind his back. His long dark coat brushed the floor, and the golden emblem on his chest reflected the soft lights of the infirmary. He walked forward and stopped beside the small pedestal holding Lena's glowing fire globe. It burned with a steady orange light, soft but alive. The room was silent, as if even the air respected its presence. "You carried this fire across one of the harshest places in this galaxy," Telric said quietly. "You protected it with no machines, no tools, and no weapons." Lena slowly sat up in the bed. "I didn't do it to impress anyone," she said, her voice a little hoarse. "I did it because I knew how, because where I come from. Fire is life." Telric nodded once. He studied the globe, then turned to face her fully. "You did not just survive the trial," he said. "You transformed it." Word spread fast. By the next morning, the entire academy knew. The human girl, small, quiet, and often ignored, had completed the trial by flame, without a single failure. Her fire still burned. She had saved 2 cadets she had asked for. No reward. In the hallways, alien cadets who once laughed now moved aside to let her pass. Some stared in awe. Others nodded with quiet respect, but Lena didn't walk with pride or arrogance. She wore the same worn cloak, carried the same satchel, and kept her voice low. The only thing different was the quiet, strength in her eyes, like someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger. A few days later, the ceremony was held. In the Grand Dome, hundreds of cadets, instructors, and high-ranking officers filled the room. Light streamed through the tall glass ceiling. Flags of different worlds waved gently in the air. At the center stood a raised platform with 5 seats, one for each of the top finishers of the trial. 4 were already filled, and then Lena walked in. She stepped onto the stage with calm steps. The other cadets stood as she passed, even those from powerful worlds. The crowd fell silent. Telric waited beside the 5th chair. As Lena reached him, he raised his voice. "Cadets," he said, "this academy has trained warriors from 37 systems. We have seen strength, speed, intelligence, and pride. Looked across the crowd, but today we honor something else. Endurance, kindness, wisdom, and the power to make fire not with weapons, but with patience and knowledge." He turned to Lena. "You passed the trial with no technology, you helped your rivals, you made no excuses, and you succeeded where machines failed." Telric reached into a case beside him and lifted a small silver badge shaped like a flame. He pinned it to Lena's cloak. "From this day forward," he said, "you are known not only as a cadet, but as a firekeeper." The room filled with applause, not loud or wild, but steady and respectful. Lena bowed her head once. After the ceremony, Lena stepped outside into the academy gardens. The suns were setting, and the sky turned gold and purple. The insectoid cadet she had saved walked up to her slowly. "I never said thank you," he said. "I should have." Lena smiled. "You just did." He looked at the flame badge on her cloak. "They're calling you a firekeeper now." "I guess so," Lena replied. "Sounds better than the girl with bare hands." They both laughed. Softly, the tall alien girl who had also survived joined them. "I saw your forge," she said. "It was beautiful and peaceful." "Thank you," Lena said. They stood there for a moment, watching the stars appear in the sky. Later that night, Lena returned to her quarters. On her desk, the fire globe sat inside a special case of glass, and metal still glowed softly, stronger than ever. She sat down and opened her journal. Its pages were full, now sketches, notes, ideas for new tools and techniques. She picked up a pen and wrote across the next clean page. "Fire is more than heat. It is memory. It is hope. It is the quiet light that tells the dark we are not afraid." She closed the book and looked at the fire again. Somewhere far from Earth, on a desert moon where machines had failed and pride had fallen, a girl with bare hands had lit a flame that even the stars could not ignore.